we were united in our humanity. We were talking about that tricky, touchy subject of equity. Equal work, equal pay, equal opportunity, and equal respect. Now, when I first started work, a few years back now, I was paid $500 more than the guys. I had a second degree. I looked at this earlier this year when we were putting that event together. I'd actually been asked 6 weeks earlier to write an article in the preparation for International Women's Day. And I came across a body of data that really threw me off my center of balance. Equal work, equal pay. 50 years ago, over 50 years ago, before I was born, in Australia, the law was changed and said equal work, equal pay. In the UK, equal work, equal pay. It's the law. In the USA, equal work, equal pay. And this year, in 2018, in Australia, the statistics. Women, on average, are paid 24% less than men in the same company. We're not talking different industries. We're talking even within the same organization. In the UK, 25%. In the US, 26%. What does that statistic mean for somebody? Over a lifetime, it means 43% lower lifetime earning. It's not just a life of less earnings, a life of pain. It's a lifetime. It's a retirement on lower income for longer years. Now, when I was a little girl, my idol was my grandmother. Anyone here have a grandmother who's powerful? Yeah. Mine was like one of the most amazing women. She had a degree, she had run her own business, she had been the head of department at the hospital in the town that she was in. And by the time I came around, she was well retired. And I remember learning about money from my grandmother. She ran her own investment portfolio in those days, and she made 7% over the long term. When I share that with investment advisors these days, they go, oh my God, she was good. And I, of course, sit back and go, yeah, my grandma was good. I grew up in a world where there was no difference. Women were financially capable and responsible. Men were financially capable and responsible. My parents, my father, of course, with a mother like that, no choice, right? My mother was the same. I grew up in a world where I was judged for who I was as a human, not who I was as a gender. And there I am at the beginning of this year, realizing how many people are living this life where they're judged for their gender. So you up for playing slightly? Okay, so just close your eyes. We're going to imagine. Imagine yourself as a whole being. You've got a head, 2 shoulders, pair of hips, left leg, right leg, 2 feet. Now feel one side of your body shrunk by 24%. Shake it out, let it go. Feel yourself whole again, one full, whole, balanced being. The truth is, each of us have within us a little bit that's masculine and a little bit that's feminine. We're whole. It's the story that says because one of these sides is meant to be a little bit smaller, 24, 25, or 6% smaller, or in some case more, it shrinks us. If you're a guy and you go, this world is not applicable to me, but you're living it and you're seeing that with other women, you're giving it to them and thereby also doing that to that part of you. And if you're a woman, well, you might just be living in that. So if you ever feel that story coming back on, go back to who you are whole as humanity. Now, when I started talking about the economic side of the purple elephant earlier this year, I got a couple of responses. They said, you know what? We don't get the purple piece. And I said, it's super simple. There's the blue side of us, and there's the pink side of us. When we put them together, it's purple. It's us as whole beings. And then we continued the conversation, and I had 3 major responses. They go like this. Joanne, don't be pushy. I got that from a set of guys. I got don't be shrill from a set of women. And I was sharing this with a friend of my mother's who was 76 and visiting here a couple of months ago. And her first response was, they've got a vested interest. I looked at her and went, wow. We dug into that. For some people, the idea of equity is scary. They fear that by opening up, they're giving up power and strength and wealth, as opposed to creating a greater space. And others have been told, don't upset the apple cart, be nice, it's okay. The truth is, yes, our world is better than it was 100 years ago. We're not fighting wars in the same way, famine is largely a thing of the past, and pestilence, and pretty unusual. But 50 years on from the law saying equal work, equal pay, it's still not the truth for many women's existence. The third thing I was told was, Joanne, you don't understand business. I've been in business for over 30 years. I ran my first $10 million business at 24. I get the juicy of saying, we're getting something for 24% less. I'm just not prepared to buy into a story that says that that's an acceptable story when it comes literally from saying, the only way I can make my numbers, I can make my profit and keep my shareholders happy, is by abusing a group of people. Just to put it out super simple. The truth is, super successful businesses are able to do this. For example, Salesforce.com. The CEO of Salesforce.com had his head of HR approach him and said, you know what, we talk about equity, pay equity, but I'm not sure we've got it. He said, no, we do. We're not that kind of company. And she said, He said, get the data. She comes back with the data not long after, and he looks at it. And I respect this because this is a moment of courage as a leader. He looked at it and he said, that's not the truth I want to see. What do we do? Formally, every year, they review pay levels across genders and other areas of diversity to make sure there is equity. They have found it needs to be an annual process because they've identified that as they bring other companies on board, there's not always equity. It's actually a pretty pragmatic process. Earlier this year, an archaic industry, anyone ever heard of mining? Super old school, masculine-dominated industry. A CEO of one of the mining companies in Australia said, okay, and as an executive took the decision to actually comply with the law and comply with equity and said, we are going to ensure that women are paid the same as men. The result, women every month, remember this is a monthly thing, every month the average pay differential that they've received is $3,400 for them and their families. 24% is a lot of money. So it's something that as leaders we can do. It's something that as individuals we can ask about. But there's a bigger thing. Why the elephant? Here we go. The Sustainable Development Goals are targeted, the next set of them, for 2035. It's now 2018, so that's just 17 years away, right? However, the World Economic Forum says that at current rates of progress, it's 217 years until economic equity. That's a 200-year gap. That's 8 generations. So the processes that we currently have underway at the moment, gentle and socially safe as they are, don't fit with this bigger picture. Of the Sustainable Development Goals, item number 5 says, economic equity, the rising tide of women and girls economically, creates a massive ripple effect across nearly every one of the rest of the Sustainable Development Goals. And yet, 217 years on current practice. So it's actually something where we have a powerful place to make action and make a difference. This is what we call why we started calling it the purple elephant of the beautiful future. It's a big issue, it's an elephant. It's one about who we are as men and women. How do we want to show up as men and women, as boys and girls? What is the future we want to create? When I was a kid, my dad, one of my other role models, he was a scientist where everyone was Mr. because everyone had a PhD. Mind you, most of the mothers did too, so it was a pretty weird and wonderful place to grow up. The research institute that I grew up at was part of what later became known as the Green Revolution. When they were first set up, they had the vision. What would the world be like if wars are no longer fought for food and the world is actually fed? When it started, they thought this was going to be a multi-generational challenge. By the time I graduated from high school, the Green Revolution had peacefully completed in less than a lifetime. Companies had got together with countries and individuals to create a change. It's possible to create stunning changes in a very short time. What would happen if each company made a choice to say, equity is simply something we are going to see happen? What would happen if that happened in a decade? One of the interesting truths is that these days, out of the top 200 economic entities in this world, over half of them are corporate. People listening to this talk have influence in those corporations, have relations and parents in those corporations. We cannot just do this ourselves. We can influence those who influence, creating a greater domino effect. And some have asked, what is the pathway? So for those of you who've ever done anything with Carnegie Mellon, you may have come across maturity models. This is based on that. And what we saw when we started looking at that, there was actually a journey in there. In business, we'd call this a strategic change journey. Acceptance is pretty much level 3. That's following the law, equal work, equal pay. For some organizations, it's a bit tougher than that. They've got to come from somewhere behind, maybe spaces where there is not this equity, potentially spaces where it's more destructive. And then on the upside, it's not just about acceptance. It's about respect. It's about appreciation, and conceivably even a world based on joy. Because the truth is, simple acceptance and fixing it is only part of the challenge to get to a sustainable future. So I want to leave you with 2 thoughts. Firstly, as you move forward in life, as you walk in to sit down and study or go into the office, remember the whole you. There is no need to feel shrunk. Girls, if you're ever in that situation where you feel that happening, remember the moment of wholeness and stay with it. And boys, remember how it felt, shrunk, and let it go. Bring the gift of wholeness to just yourself and to the person you're looking at. And for anyone here who's in a capacity to influence in organizations, speak to them about getting the data and having the courage to take the leadership decision to create equity. Because the purple elephant of the beautiful future can have wings on it. And this is something that can happen in a decade, not in 8 generations.